Hey guys, it's Miss Ramsey. We're going to go ahead and do our very first flipped lesson this year. So what that means is that you're going to go ahead and watch this video as part of your homework tonight, and then when you come in tomorrow, we won't have to take any notes. You will have already seen that part. So that means we can just get right to work and have lots of time to get stuff done. So I think that's kind of cool. So let's go ahead and get started with what we're talking about today, which is evaluating functions. We have talked about what a function is. We've talked about domain and range and that kind of stuff. And so now we're going to kind of put all those pieces together and figure out how do we put that into some context. Okay, there's some new notation that you need to know here when we're talking about functions, and that's this f parentheses x. Now what that means, this is not f times x. Okay, we don't solve for that x. We don't get that x by itself. Nothing like that. This means f of x. That's how you would read this out loud. F of x. Okay? And what that means is the output of the function for the input of x. So if I know the input, I can plug it in, I can do what it says, in this case multiply it by 2 and add 1, and then I can figure out what my output is going to be. Okay? Now there's a different way that we can write this. Let's say that I wanted to plug in 5. I want to know when my input is 5, what is my output? Well, a way that they could ask you that is they could say, what is f of 5? Now, f, in this case, is nothing more than the name of the function. So this function is called f. We could just as easily call it Frank or Fred. You might sometimes see other ones like g of x or h of x or anything else. Again, it's no different than saying this function is called Fred, this one is called George, and this one is called Hank. It's the exact same thing. It's just giving it a different name each time. Okay? Now, another thing to point out is remember that the output is the y value. And so f of x is really just another way for writing y. Okay, we plug x in, we get y out. Or we plug x in, we get f of x out. So if it's saying, what is f of x, the question that is asking us is really, if the input is 5, what is the output? And remember, that's really just a substitution problem. We would just take 5 and plug it in for x. 2 times 5 would be 10, plus 1, we'd get 11. So let's look at an example of that. Okay. So here's a problem. For f of x, in this case, f of x is equal to 2 times 3 to the x power minus 5. We want to evaluate f of 2. Again, that's just saying, if 2 is the input, what is the output? We're just going to substitute a 2 there. So what I'm going to do is just rewrite this equation, and instead of x, I'm going to put in 2. 2 times 3 to the second power minus 5. Don't forget what our order of operations says here, okay? As we go through and evaluate these, this is going to be really, really important. Parentheses first, which means I have to do what's inside here. And that happens to be an exponent. 3 to the second power means 3 times itself, so that would be 9. So now I have 2 times 9 minus 5. And then we have to do multiplication, so I get 18 minus 5, which is 13. And that would be your answer. It's just substituting. F of 2 in this case, would be 13. Now, a common mistake that I see people do is to do f of 2 and they get 13, but then they want to divide by 2 and get that f by itself. Don't do that. The f and the 2 are connected. It's not two separate things. It's one symbol, f of 2. You can't take that 2 off. All right, so that's how we evaluate. What we're really getting towards today then is evaluating a function over multiple points. So in this case, I'm looking at a domain that contains -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we have this equation, f of x equals x squared plus 4x minus 5. Anytime we want a graph, we can use a table to do that. This is, some of you have probably heard this called an in-out table before. This is just a table of inputs and outputs. X is our input, f of x is our output, and remember, another name for this is just, it's our y value. And so is this. This is really just our y value. So that means that to figure out what goes with -2, I just have to plug it in. So I am going to do that. Everywhere that there's an x, even though there's an x in more than one spot here, everywhere that there's an x, I'm going to plug it in. So I get -2 squared plus 4 times -2 minus 5. Okay, order of operations, we have to do the exponent first. -2 squared is 4, and then 4 times -2 is -8 minus 5. 4 minus 8 is -4, minus 5 is -9. And so that's what we get for this first box. -9 is what we got. Then we do it again. This process is kind of tedious, but that's how we go through and do this. So I'm going to work out, I'm going to do the same thing again. I plug in -1 and I square it. Plus 4 times -1 minus 5. -1 squared is +1. 4 times -1 is -4 minus 5. This one gives us -8. And then we go ahead and continue on and do the same thing for all the rest of them until we have our table filled out. So by the magic of technology, here's what you get after you finish filling out the entire table. And so what we do now, each of those has told us an ordered pair. So in this table, when the input is -2 and the output is -9, that's the ordered pair, -2, -9, and so on for all the rest of the rows. So we're just going to graph those. Remember, we graph x first and then y. So -2 on the x would be to the left, and then -9 would mean to go down, so I'd get that point. -1, -8 would be like this. 0, -5 would be here. 2, 7, did I do 1? 1, 0 would be here. 2, 7 here, and then 3, 16 I can't really fit on my graph. Now you can kind of see that we're starting to get this sort of curve here like this. And so if you can kind of tell where the points are going, go ahead and connect them a little bit. It's not quite a straight line because the points aren't all in a row, but you can kind of graph them and see how it's going to curve there. Okay? So again, to complete a table, we just need to substitute each of those x values, figure out what the answer is, and that tells us the y value. The x and the y values together tell us the ordered pair, and then we can use those ordered pairs to plot it on the graph. Okay? That's all the notes for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow to get our work started.